I'm quite nervous, quite nervous to be talking in front of people. Generally, I do feel nervous when I give public talks and so on. But having said that, I'm so delighted to be here, and especially because I'm going to talk about Karuna Trust, what Karuna does work in India. Karuna Trust established 35 years ago in UK, and they've been working in India last 35 years, changing people's lives, millions and millions of people's lives throughout last 35 years. They mainly work in lower caste communities. Probably heard about the caste system in India. And they work with the really marginalized communities, the bottom of the caste people, challenging caste system, building dignity, self-respect, women's empowering projects, education, kindergartens, and so on. So I will come back to that a little bit later on about Karuna Trust. I'd like to say thank you very much to the Ajyoti. She really encouraged me to come and give this talk. I wasn't going to come. I was middle of leading this fundraising campaign with Michael, but the Ajyoti said, would it be really good if you can come and talk a little bit about your life as growing up in India as a Dalit, poor children, or as a Sanghanath. And Keval as well. Keval and Dajut really encouraged me, Sanghanath, go and give a talk. And I thought, okay, I will do this. So I'm mainly here actually talk about a little bit about my life, if you like, how it felt like growing up in India in Dalit community, the lower caste community, and how caste system has affected my life, in a not nice way, if you like. But what I'd like to ask you is, when you hear a little bit my story or a little bit about Karuna Trust, how respond, a bit more imaginative response, I'm kind of asking you to have imaginative response to my life or the story I'm going to talk about people. Because often what happens is people do hear stories and problems of India or problems in the third world countries and so on. People just see it's like advert and they attracted to that advert and they forget in 5 minutes or buy that product, if you like, But I am actually asking you to have a response that would make difference in your life, in your mind, in your heart. So I'm asking to a little bit imagine more when we think about Karuna Trust or problems of India or problems of Dalit people in India and so on. I'm trying not to look at my notes, but I will just see them where I am regarding my talk. So I can tell you about my life a lot. I can tell you the story of my life and so on. But when I was thinking that particularly this talk, there's one theme about this Buddhafield is compassion in action or courageous compassion. And whenever I think about compassion, first thing come to my mind is people. And when I was reflecting on a little bit about my life, first thing came in relation with this theme, compassion, is people. Suppose if we live in very poor conditions, if we live in disadvantaged communities, if we live in the hell of caste, if you like, what you end up with is stories. The people, they are in your mind for all sorts of reasons, for good reasons, for worse reasons, or greater reasons, for all sorts of reasons. So when I was thinking about in relation with compassion, that's first thing came to my mind is some people, that people have affected my life, if you like, in India. So I kind of decided to just a little bit tell you the stories of people, that people have made a difference to my life, and see if we can learn something from the stories. I often like telling stories of people. I that sort of suppose I learn from seeing people's lives, the people have affected my life and so on. So I decided to kind of give you just short stories about 3 people that made huge difference to my practice recently. Yeah. So first thing I'd like to say about my mother. My mother, she grew up in very small village in India, where I was growing up in southwest of India, and she got married when she was 17 years old, probably 17 or 18 years old. She got married, and after marriage, her husband died. Maybe three years after my father died, and my mother, she just left with myself and my brother called Uday. I was 6 months old. I don't have any memories about my father and so on. And my mother left with these 2 children. She's an uneducated woman. She can't read, can't write, little confidence in her life, not many opportunities in her life. And she ended up with this horrible situation where she became widow. And I can imagine she faced three kind of discrimination in Indian society that time. One is being Dalit woman, another is just women, gender discrimination, and third is widow woman, because that time the attitude towards the women in India, the traditional Indian society that time, was very, very bad. So she did actually face this 3 ways discrimination when she was growing up. Anyway, she left with this situation. She doesn't know what to do with this situation. And so imagine if you like in that situation, how would you respond to the life? Would you respond saying yes to life, or how would you kind of respond that kind of situation? And I can imagine my mother also has to go through also responses. She struggled. She must have said, "Oh, this is too much." She must have blamed the situation. She felt, "Oh, these 2 children, I can't cope with this one," and so on. But instead, she told me one thing. I asked her a question, "Mom, how did you respond with this kind of situation? Must be very, very difficult in that kind of conditions to look after children and just keep up with life." And she said one thing. She said her family wanted to force to her second marriage, and she said, "No, I can't have a second marriage. I'd like to live for my children." And she dedicated and committed for whole life for 2 children, myself and my brother. And I'm telling this story because what I learned from kind of reflecting on mom is just a sense of engagement with life, sense of responding with life, saying yes to life, whatever is in front of you, just saying yes to life and dealing with it. Yeah. And that's I learned from my mom, first lesson, how she responded with just saying committed, this is my 2 children, I don't have a choice now, I have to just look after. And she worked really, really hard in her life, and she just committed. So that's one thing I really learned from my mother, is to just sense of engagement and responding to the life. I'll come back to a little bit about that later on. Second story I want to tell is the doctor's response to my situation. So once my mom was in hospital and she had to go through few operation, and she was in hospital for a couple of weeks. At the end of the couple of weeks, you have to pay some money for medicine, for rent, and so on. And it wasn't easy that time for people like my mother to pay for medicine. Yeah, it was very, very difficult. The hospital situation was very difficult and so on. But she has to go through emergency operation. And I was 17 years old. I was working as a shopkeeper and I was studying as well that time. At the end of the 2 weeks in hospital, I have to pay this money, and I didn't have that money. I didn't have much money at all, because that was my situation. And I ended up with really stressful situation, really stressed. How can I get this money? And I asked a few friends, I asked a few families, relatives, but none of them could give me that much money. So I was really stressed on what to do with this kind of situation. If I don't pay back this money, what would happen? Would my mom get discharged from hospital? How doctor would say, and so on. I was going through so many stories in my head. But one point I said, come on, Sanghanath, now you got to go and talk with doctor. Yeah. And I decided to go and see the doctor. And I was chanting mantra actually. I was chanting Vajrasattva mantra. I came to in my mind that time. I was very involved with Buddhist activities in that time. And when I was 17, I was very inspired by Buddhist idols and so on. So came to my mind the Vajrasattva, and I was just chanting Vajrasattva mantra for 10 minutes until I go and see the doctor. Straight in, I went to doctor's room. I sat in front of her, and I told her my situation. Doctor, here is my situation. I don't have that much money to pay you because I am a student. My mother doesn't work. She's poor. And this is how much I money got. And doctor said, give me what you got. And she took all money. And she said, take this 5 rupees back and go back and celebrate Diwali. Diwali is a bit like a Christmas festival. And she said, I know how much you love your mother. She said, how much you love your mother. I know how much you care about your mother, how much you look after her last 2 weeks in hospital. Yeah. And just don't worry. Take this 500 rupees back. 500 is a bit like £5 that time. And go and celebrate Diwali. And I never ever forget the story in my life. Her response to my situation with kindness and warmth and generosity, I never ever forget. So what I learned actually from her, whenever there is a situation in my life, in my family, friends, people are in situations like that, I remember her response to me, and I try to act like her, act like her kindness and so on. So I'm wondering, what we can learn this kind of. I know I'm telling this story because it does matter for humanity. It's felt like me that humanity is worth living for, if you like. And that story made huge difference to me when I reflect on that story. The third story I want to tell you, it's a small girl on the street. I was in India last year in January, this year in January, with my wife. My wife is British, and we were both here in India visiting my family and friends. And there was one situation. I was buying something in mobile shop, and my wife standing outside front of the mobile shop. And one poor girl, very little, maybe 3 years old, she came to her. And she was trying to ask something. She was trying to communicate with my wife, but she couldn't speak any Marathi or Hindi. And she didn't have any money with her because her wallet with me. So she ran in. She came to me, Sanghanath. She said, "Come on, give me some money. I want to give back. I want to give something to that girl." And I said, "Hang on, I'll come." But she was very angry. She said, "No, give me no money now," thinking that girl will be gone. So she got this money. She went out. She met that little girl and she gave her money. And soon after I went there as well. And I was talking with that girl in Marathi. And instead that little girl didn't want to have money. She wanted to have a fresh juice. Just next to that mobile shop, there was a fresh juice. And she said, no, I want that juice. And I said, okay. Then I bought some juice for her and, I gave it to her. And instead she was drinking for herself. She was carrying the juice. Middle of the traffic and chaos, she lives in the street, very poor, like a street children. She was street children, live in the middle of the street, middle of the traffic and chaos. And she was carrying this juice with very, very careful. She didn't want to drop that juice. And me and my wife were just looking at her, how careful she was carrying the juice. And instead, drinking herself, she was carrying the juice to her little brother, also lives on the street. And she went there and gave that juice to her little brother. He might be just like 1 or 2 years old actually. And I really stuck by the story. The last year I spent 3 months in India doing all sorts of things. But this is the only one story really struck me, left me with thinking a lot of questions, left me thinking about Indian street children's situation, left me thinking about poverty in India. Yeah. But the most important, what struck me about that little girl is how she can imagine that juice, if that juice she gave to her little brother, the brother will be happy, that brother will be delighted. How she can imagine 2-3 years old girl, if she share that juice to her little brother, that brother will be delighted. How that imagination come from? Even she didn't have to imagine, she just did it. Yeah. This story inspires me for conviction and confidence on generosity and humanity. Since I come back, I've been coming back to this little story again and again, especially regarding what I do with Karuna, raising money and so on. It's a potential. There is a potential as a human being to be empathized with others. There is a potential for growth, development. There's a potential for generosity. There's a potential for imagine people's lives. We all can imagine how it felt like be worse or better, and we can empathize with that. So that little girl, it left me actually human being can imagine. If we share something, people will feel happy. Also, you feel happy as well. So that 3 stories made huge difference to my practice recently. Yeah. The first story from mom, I really learned about engagement, sense of engagement and commitment with life and saying yes to life, whatever is there, whatever you got in situation, just say yes. Second story with doctor is just sense of kindness and warmth. Generosity inspires generosity. Humanity inspires humanity. Empathy is possible. So I learned that story from that doctor. And the third story I learned, actually as a human being, there is a potential in us to be generous, to be empathized with others, to share things with others. That makes huge difference in people's lives. Yeah. So this story, I partly chose because it made a huge difference to my life recently. And I'm sure it will continue to make a difference. But essentially what this story is telling, this is 3 stories, but I think these stories are millions and millions of people around the world, especially with India. There are people, millions and women like my mother, struggling, fighting with life and still living. There are doctors, millions of doctors in India, probably worse, better, but there are some doctors making difference in people's lives, just out of generous response. That little girl living on the street every day, fighting for food. Probably that juice, she never had that juice in her life, and she wanted to instead that money to, not money but that juice, So these stories represent millions and millions of people's lives in India. So I want to come back to now Karuna Trust. Karuna Trust works in India. So there is a sense of engagement I learned from my mom. If you engaged, if you committed, if you say yes to life, then things can change. Yeah. So when I see my mom's situation, she can make a difference for 2 people, two children, myself and my brother. But as an organization, as a charity, we can make a difference to many millions of people throughout the world. Yeah. So I just want to come back from this story to move on to a little bit Karuna Trust, what Karuna Trust does in India. So Karuna Trust, anyway, Judy Dench is our patron. That's the most important thing. Someone like me as a volunteer knocked her door and she became our supporter for a long, long time. And then she became our patron. She's wonderful, actually. Because of her, we're getting so many responses from Judy Dench. And Karuna works in India. This is a Buddhist charity based in Triratna. And we work in India last 35 years. There are estimated about 90,000 people benefit every year from this Karuna Trust. And about 60,000 people indirectly benefit from this work in India. So mainly we work in the bottom of the caste system people, focus on education, human rights, kindergartens, women's empowering projects, right livelihood, and so on. I could tell you a lot about charity, but I'm not going to tell you very much about this charity because I want to tell you the 90,000 people are benefiting in India. They're only because the fundraising campaign we run in UK, the money we raise in UK, that's making huge difference in people's lives in India. And that's how I'm actually part of that project at the moment. So I want to talk a little bit about that one. But if you want to find out about Karuna Trust, just Karuna Trust, and you can find out very much about Karuna Trust. One thing I want to say about Karuna Trust is I am here actually sitting in front of you because of this charity. This charity is one of project came to my village 20 years ago. 25 years ago, came to my village in rural India, in southwest India, and that's how I benefited from this charity. They had a project for children, teaching children singing, songs, drama, and things like that, and fired imagination of children. And that project came to my village, and that's how I got benefited from this charity. And then I got involved with this charity. I took over teaching children and so on. And I've been working with them last 5 years in UK, and I was working for them in India for a few years. So I'm here in front of you because of their generous response to suffering in India, their empathy to millions and millions caste-based atrocities, caste-based discrimination in India. And that's why I'm here. So I'm really grateful what Karuna does in India in that respect. Karuna's work came out from Dr. Ambedkar's vision. If you don't know Dr. Ambedkar, I would urge to find out of Dr. Ambedkar. Usually I talk a lot about Dr. Ambedkar, but I'm going to avoid a little bit talking about him. He's the first person from bottom of the caste educated and challenged the caste system in India. He written the Constitution of India. I would say he's greater than Mahatma Gandhi. If that's challenging for you, please read about Dr. Ambedkar, find out about Dr. Ambedkar. He's the most influenced and significant figure in India. He hoped for many, many millions Dalit people in India. Anyway, so people like me have affected because of this work. People like my mom, people like many, many million Dalit people in India have benefited from this charity. And that benefits, that generosity comes from, we run fundraising campaigns in UK for 6 weeks. So bunch of people live together, Buddhist people live together for 6 weeks, practice together, and in the evening go out, knock doors, and raise money for this charity. There are few people actually here, they have done fundraising campaign. Yeah. There is a Gina, Mike, got few people I think, can't see everyone. They've done this Karuna appeal. And I want to say a little bit about this appeal, how appeal works. Because one hand you can see there's a engagement and commitment required to do something in your life. So when I see my mom, there is engagement, there is a sense of commitment required to look after her 2 children. And where we here, we try to get people to engage for six weeks and commit for 6 weeks to practice meditation, practice Dhamma, if you like, practice communications, practice community, and in the evening go out and knock doors and raise money for this charity. And I am at the moment I'm middle of the leading this fundraising campaign. We are currently living in Shepherd Bush in London, and six guys living together and practicing together and raising money for this charity. There is another fundraising campaigns going on in Brighton. 4 women living together, practicing together and raising money for this charity. Yes, I wanted to get involved with this charity only because I knew that I benefited from this work and I wanted to do something for them. I wanted to continue these conditions for people, for children in India, for women in India. They also can benefit and have a better chance to live good life. I knew that it has made huge difference to my life. The Karuna's partners or Karuna works in India coming to my village and made a difference. So I knew that when I came to England, this is actually I need to do. I need to get involved with this charity and do something for my brothers and sisters in India. And that's why I'm actually involved with this work at the moment. Before I finish my talk, I just wanted to emphasize with one thing, and then I will open to a little bit have a question and answer. So one thing I want to emphasize is commitment. And when I say commitment, I'd like to say commitment with imagination. So not just commitment. So the first thing is we have to engage with our life. Whatever is there, we have to get engaged and kind of have a response. A bit like my mom said, yes to life, and she just carried with sense of engagement and commitment. Yeah. So we have to do that. Everyone has to do that in order to be successful or whatever, bring the positive change in your life. But that's not enough. When I see my mom, she in that situation, that's the best thing she can do. She can respond to situations and she can look after these 2 children. But in my case, I am a bit better. I'm in better position than her. Yeah. I can't just think looking after 2 or 3 children. I have to think a little bit more than that because I'm in better situation at the moment. And as a community, we can achieve more. Yeah. And that's why I'm inspired by kind of spiritual community, if you like, living together, practicing together. And with that sense of engagement and commitment, we can help many, many people in India or throughout the world. So 90,000 people are benefiting in India every year because of bunch of people, the bunch of charity like Karuna Trust coming together and practicing together. So I want to emphasize with commitment and engagement. Yeah. When I say commitment and engagement, I can say 2 things about this. One is just commitment. Fact that you just know there is some positive changes happening. There are some fact and figures are you can see, and then you can get inspired to do something for charity. Yeah, there are some experience involved. I can see myself. I benefit from this charity, so I can see there is something truthful, something meaningful is going on, and I can commit based on that experience. I can commit with something, but sometimes you have to commit with something you don't know. Sometimes you know what you're committing with, and sometimes you just don't have any idea what's going to happen. So it's a bit like my mother. She didn't have any idea if she looking after children, what these children is going to bring to her. She didn't have any idea, but anyway, she just responded to this situation with wholeheartedly, if you like. So with Karuna Trust, with work I'm doing at the moment, it's a bit like that. Sometimes I really don't know what my actions going to bring in the world. Yeah. I really don't know how many people gonna benefit in India through this raising money. Yeah. Only I can see is my life has benefited from all sorts of people, and I have that conviction, and I can do something for others. Yeah. So sometime I think, bit like that little girl, we have a generous response to something as a human being, but something get in way that we forget that. We sometimes too much reason, with too much thinking or too much reasoning before you give something, share something, to whatever good cause there. And sometimes we stop our generosity thinking too much, if you like, don't get me wrong, thinking and reasoning is good quality to have. But that little girl, how she naturally just goes in and just give that little juice to this brother, And I think with commitment, with charity or organization, whatever you're doing, probably with positive change or maybe Buddhist center or spreading Dhamma, we have to be committed for a long, long time. So imagine last 35 years, Karuna Trust has been working in India. 35 years ago, they wouldn't have any clue how many people will benefit in India. They wouldn't have any clue Sanghanath will be in Buddhafield now and giving you talk. Yeah, they wouldn't have any idea. But because of their commitment for a long time and sense of engagement, things are possible. We can change, not the world, but at least we can change something, very significant amount of people's lives. So I really want to encourage you, if you're involved with something, have a think how you can commit it with something bit longer, long time. That makes difference. Commitment and engagement hopefully will bring something for us as a human being. We will learn a lot from commitment and sense of engagement. I especially have learned a lot. And because of that, people will benefit in India or in the world. So that's one thing I wanted to say. I just wanted to end with one thing after commitment is when we do Karuna appeals, so we live together for six weeks. We practice together. We go out in evenings. We knock doors and raise money for this charity. And we do one exercise in that community. So we live together. So we go out. And it's not easy to live together though. We just, sometimes it's hard living together as a spiritual fellow. But people practice friendship and so on. And people go out, people really, really work hard. I have great respect people who do Karuna appeals. I have a tremendous respect on them because it's one of the challenging things to do. Yeah, that's why courageous compassion, probably the title is really good for these appeals. It's courageous thing to do, just going and simply knocking doors, meeting with strangers, asking them to support our work in India and so on. So what happens, people go out, get these booklets, give to people, ask them to read, come back. And because of them, people do support charity. So they come up with this direct debit, the regular support. Yeah, we call regular support. They come back with this direct debit. And we really celebrate, this direct debit because it's sense of success. It's coming from engagement, commitment, hard work, and so on. And we try to celebrate this direct debit. And we say, sadhu, well done, you've been really working hard and so on. And the end, that direct debit, that supporters, we offer to shrine, the Buddhist shrine, we offer to shrine. And we end up with transfer our merits for other living base. So we really, really try hard, whatever we get is to celebrate, appreciate, and the end, that merits kind of transfer to other living beings. And I think this is kind of interesting thing, I think, for me when I do Karuna appeals. So I have sense as a Buddhist, as you probably, you have lots of merits in your life. Especially when I came to England first time, the England looked to me like God realm. It felt like everything is perfect in England. The houses, the people were so considerate to each other, people so kind to each other, which I didn't get in India, in harsh, very harsh life in India. So when I came to England, it felt like I'm in a really God heaven, if you like, that kind of image. There's a sense of merits I felt. There are really sense of merits I felt. But when you get these merits in the Karuna, so we get this direct debit, we offer them, and we really tried hard to not to attach with these merits, not to attach with these merits, and that merits can go now and help others, other living beings. As soon as you attached with these merits, this is me, this is I, and there's that I, me, comes in your way, and you probably don't see more than that. So what we're trying to do with this work, with merits, fantastic. It's a good thing to cultivate, and probably if you committed with some kind of projects, social projects, Dhamma projects, they're likely to get good merits, likely to cultivate merits, and it's good to celebrate them, enjoy them, have a fruitful benefits from them. But the end, that merits has to go for other living beings. So what Dalai Lama says is love without attachment is possible. Love, so the merit, it's possible. You get merit, celebrate, and don't attach with that. You just give it to them others. And letting go that merits, letting go attachment, it requires courage. It requires tremendous amount of practice. It requires saying, letting go. It requires a lot of practice. So the courageous compassion, if you like, it only will come from it requires for courageous to be non-attached or letting go the merits. And I want to end this one, because I am part of this project, and I've been trying to cultivate this kind of quality. Whatever I'm getting here, I'd like to transfer that merits to other living beings. And I don't know what happens next, but that's mystery. That's mystery to me. But the courageous compassion would require engagement, sense of engagement, commitment, saying yes to life, saying yes to generosity, imagination. The merits will grow, and we have to leave that merit for other living beings. So I think I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.